Deep in an ethereal headspace, Claire Cagano flexes her main character lineage while dumping on her younger brother Sid, whom she treats like a background NPC in school hallways beside random classmates, with total annoyance. Smash cut to a luxury restaurant where she stabs a juicy piece of roast beef and enters pure culinary euphoria, raving about the Mitsugoshi food. Sid plays the dutiful beta male brother in a tuxedo, prompting Claire to audit his bank account. When he lies about being homies with the CEO to flex his non-existent savings, he swallows his pride with a fake smile, remembering her annoying head pokes back home. Claire suddenly goes full doom and gloom about her tournament win, muttering about top-tier boss encounters and Shadow's unexpected spawn. Sid ad-libs an over-the-top reaction and fabricates a memory of her cool victory pose, instantly getting pinned to the floor at knife point because it was actually a middle finger, as she frets about his trash-tier academic future. He lies nonchalantly on the floor like a slacker, smirking about his secret identity, leaving her to sigh and pull out a glowing weapon to force recruit him for a high-level raid on the Blood Queen. Sid's inner Chunibyo hyperventilates with joy at the vampire trope. Under a glowing full moon, she marches him through town explaining her spell sword anti-vampire score, leading Sid to question basic undead lore before she clarifies that Lawless Town is the server's last Wild West zone under the shadow of the Crimson Tower. She insists this side quest will boost his knight resume, promising complete protection with a squad leader smirk. Sid detects aggro and sniffs blood in the air, sending Claire into high alert panic as she dashes down a dark alley and draws her weapon on a shadow. A blonde figure turns as a blood-soaked ghoul mob wobbles out and leaps. Claire shoves Sid back and executes a horizontal slash that paints the walls with gore, gasping in shock as the thrall's clothes shred from the DPS. Sid, committed to the ultimate NPC roleplay, drops a world-class, sweat-drenched scream while the pale creep recoils. Claire drops into a defensive stance, yelling at the shadows to step away from her brother, and while she frets over his safety, Sid stutters his line while mentally scoring his S-tier mob performance. They stand over the lootless corpse as Sid asks if it was alone, prompting Claire to explain ghoul lore while pitying the young victim. She laments human corruption and worries about turning into a monster herself, but when Sid tries a snappy mob insult, she violently pummels him into the pavement. Recovering her melancholy tone, she whispers rumors about Princess Rose's corruption and her own childhood curse, recalling black blemishes taking over her body and inspecting her hand nervously. Sid keeps a poker face, remembering he already cured that debuff years ago, and offers a calm reassurance while dripping blood. She instantly flips her mood with a bright grin, leaving Sid staring in dazed disbelief. Calling for night backup, they walk out as Sid looks at the sky and notes the ominous red moon. Meanwhile, high up on an opulent palace balcony at night, Sid's hyper-loyal Lieutenant Beta stands at attention in full gear, notebook in hand, to deliver her status report on their global faction expansion. While she rambles on about new member training, Sid stands dramatically with his back turned, sipping wine like a final boss. Instead of listening to world lore, his galaxy brain internal monologue is completely fixated on his impending poverty and how he's going to fund his Chunibyo lifestyle. He realizes that tagging along to the Lawless Town isn't a chore, it's a gold mine. Popping a villainous smirk at the thought of grinding bandit camps for easy loot. Sensing his sudden shift in vibe, Beta asks if everything is okay, to which Sid turns on the maximum edgelord filter, announcing that a storm of blood is coming. Before taking a slow sip, Beta looks utterly lost, so Sid hitches up the dramatic flair and commands her to gaze upon the moon. Beta looks up, noticing the lunar tint is slightly off as the wind blows, when suddenly, her brain rewires this mundane line into absolute gospel. Gasping if this is the apocalyptic red moon of ancient lore, she immediately loses her mind, apologizing for her incompetence and begging to send the entire Shadow Garden Guild as backup. Sid waves her off with total indifference, stating he'll solo the event himself. When Beta stammers that invading the Crimson Tower without a full raid party is suicidal, Sid hits her with an icy main character glare that radiates pure intimidation, asking if she dares defy him. Beta practically vibrates in terror, backing down instantly and apologizing. Sid casually lowers his glass, which glints in the moonlight, chuckling that a slightly red moon isn't a big deal anyway. He holds his glass out over the balcony against the blood-red sky, dropping a cringe poetry line asking if the crimson night isn't beautiful. Beta's eyes turn into literal star emojis as she starts furiously scribbling down his every word, convinced he's an all-knowing god who casually bends ancient prophecies to his whim. Sid glances back, internally cheering her on for buying into his nonsensical improv and adding "of legend" to his personal cringe lexicon. Right in the filthy, dilapidated gut of Lawless Town, a four-man party led by discount glasses hero Goldo treks through the slums, while Meat Shield Quentin complains about the toxic environmental biohazards. And Goldo warns everyone to stay on high alert. The massive Crimson Tower looms directly ahead as wind whistles through the spire, prompting Goldo to name-drop the vampire boss lair. Goldo flexes over the raid architecture, while Quentin snorts that size doesn't matter, strutting up to the metal gates to claim first clear rights until he spots a cross-legged NPC blocking the zone entrance. Draped in heavy chains, the gatekeeper warns that only high-level players are allowed, prompting Quentin to deliver an arrogant villain speech about taking the Blood Queen's head. The guard chuckles mockingly and hits them with a malevolent smirk, threatening to break them. Quentin gasps as the guard unhoods his bandaged, broken frame to reveal he's the former White Demon, now demoted to a level 1 gatekeeper. Quentin erupts into trash talk, boasting his tournament resume alongside Goldo, while Goldo's spider senses scream that they're hopelessly outleveled. Goldo sweats in pure terror at the guard's hidden stats, while Quentin keeps trash-talking the one-handed veteran and raises his tower shield. Boom! An invisible Frame 1 attack slaps Quentin across the jaw, leaving Goldo screaming his name as the tank hits the dirt. The guard reassures him the meat shield isn't dead, sending Goldo into a rage as he recognizes the legend and debates fleeing before choosing friendship. Triggering a lightning-fast tavern flashback of their shared defeats, Goldo screams in vengeance and channels his ultimate ability, the Golden Dragon Sword. With Quentin's voice echoing in his head praising his untapped potential, Goldo rushes the guard as golden energy blazes. The guard smirks without flinching, and as Quentin's inner memory begs him to stand his ground, Goldo leaps into a desperate high-velocity dive strike. The guard ignores the incoming attack, letting Goldo fly right past him into the alley as he mutters about being a lazy dog and smirks sinisterly. Suddenly, local mob trash step out of the shadows with clubs and pitchforks, leaving Goldo to crash land with a pathetic squeak directly into an ambush. Goldo realizes the brutal reality of the PvP zone as the narrator confirms Lawless Town is the ultimate trash heap of the world. Whip pan to the rotting marketplace of Lawless Town, where a stubby merchant shoves a charred rat on a stick to Claire Kaginu. She hits him with an instant rejection, while a shady drug dealer offers high-causing plants, triggering her to snap before venting about the city's total lack of order. Peering down the rotting skyline toward 3 monolithic towers, Sid casually confirms these color-coded structures are enemy territory, prompting Claire to declare the Crimson Tower their raid target. She demands a strategy meeting first, but as she mentions spell sword intel, Sid grabs her and speed runs them deeper into the slums. Claire drags him along like a lost pet while Sid complains, though she refuses to let go in case bad guys kidnap her frail brother. Sid mutters that he isn't a kidnapped princess, right as a slave merchant intercepts them, offering 2 shackled prisoners, Quentin and the White Demon, for 37 million zenny. Claire glares cold judgment at the slave trade and struts off while Sid reflects on the slum trash fire. He glances at the trembling, collar-bound prisoners, staring blankly at their pathetic state as the white demon whines over food crumbs, completely failing to recognize his former tournament opponents before walking away, hoping they find decent buyers. Night falls under an eerie red moon, prompting Sid to marvel at the supernatural RPG sky physics. Ditching Claire's strategy briefing, Sid sneaks out for a walk to farm the local area. Suddenly, a brown-haired pickpocket speeds past him like a streak of wind, but Sid executes a frame-perfect counter-pickpocket, smugly invoking an eye for an eye. Counting a sweet 40k zenny take, Sid beams with pure greed at this infinite money exploit and clutches the cash to finance his future shadow play. Standing nonchalantly on a corner, a sudden woman's scream heralds a mob spawn as a ghoul silhouette frightens the crowd. Sid prepares his standard mob evasion routine until two thugs step up looking for stress relief. One thug snaps a random young man's neck over gambling losses, spraying blood everywhere while the duo laughs at their human sandbag. Sid watches the brutal beatdown in silence, soaking in the chaotic, blood-soaked atmosphere. Realizing normal mob behavior might make him stand out in this high PvP zone, he strikes an edgy hand-on-forehead pose to play the mysterious background boy who chuckles at violence. The thugs finally leave the victim to go grab booze, but the corpse snaps its eyes open with feral aggression and bites a thug's neck in a shower of gore. The thug screams as the ghoul gets hit by an invisible force before getting sliced through the torso, leaving the thug wailing before getting cut down himself. Sid maintains his cool pose against the wall as the ghoul turns toward him and lunges with killer intent. Sid gives a condescending yuck as an invisible strike guts the monster midair. Vampire Hunter Mary steps out, commanding him to run, hitting a combat stance under the red sky while warning that the Red Moon rampage has begun. Covering his eye like an edgelord, Sid asks for her ID, and she introduces herself as the oldest vampire hunter hunting the Blood Queen. Screaming townspeople flee from spawning ghouls, while a spellsword tries organizing an evacuation until Mary dashes in to intercept the monster. Sid's mental HUD lights up at buzzwords like rampage and vampire hunter, grinning like a maniac as he realizes a major event side quest just triggered and striking a theatrical pose to formally enter the bloody banquet. Smash cut to the chaotic slums below, where panicked crowds flee while a panicked Claire screams Sid's name at the top of her lungs. Surrounded by roaming ghouls, she curses her brother for wandering off despite orders to sit still. She grabs a random mob NPC who rudely suggests Sid got eaten, so she instantly obliterates his face with a direct punch before slumping in grief, praying Sid isn't dead. Suddenly, she spots a blonde ghoul crouched over a dark, shaggy-haired corpse, making wet, crunching noises. Thinking her brother just got turned into monster chow, Claire delivers a brutal horizontal slash that bisects the ghoul. The dark-haired victim's head rolls away onto the cobblestones as Claire pants heavily over the carnage, staring at the dark locks and screaming if the severed head belongs to Sid. Crashing to her knees in total emotional ruin, she shrieks at the heavens in denial, sobbing into the dirt and begging for her brother's forgiveness. Out of nowhere, Mary asks if she's looking for a black-haired young man, causing Claire to snap her tear-stained face up. Mary introduces herself and mentions spotting two guys fitting the description. One who was creepily laughing at monsters, which Claire violently rejects because her frail little bro wouldn't laugh like a creep. And a generic, plain spell sword kidnapped by the Blood Queen's goons. Claire gasps as the generic description hits 100% accuracy, shouting that it's definitely Sid. Mary apologizes for failing to save him, but Claire ignores the apology, snarling through her teeth to demand Sid's location. Mary reveals he's being taken to the Crimson Tower as a blood sacrifice and offers an alliance, which Claire accepts with cold resolve. wiping her tears and swearing to save Sid. The pair duck into a ruined building for shelter, setting down a lantern as Mary confirms Claire's identity and shared goal. Claire asks what's going on, prompting Mary to drop essential lore. Mary asks how much Claire knows about vampires, and Claire notes they've been extinct for 1,000 years. Gripping her sword, Mary dives into ancient history. Vampires once ruled humanity like livestock, until humans figured out their weaknesses, flipping the script and making humans the hunters. Destroying their heart kills them instantly. Lack of blood drains their super stats, and sunlight turns them to instant ash. But just as vampires became myth, a massive catastrophe occurred. The Red Moon wiped out 3 entire kingdoms overnight, courtesy of the Blood Queen, Elizabeth. Claire gasps at the mention of the Red Moon, frantically pointing at the sky outside and asking if this nightmare is repeating itself. Mary confirms the ghoul rampage is just the opening act. Focusing on the Red Moon will grant vampires 3 days of continuous daylight-free stat buffs. Cut to Sid standing in the ruins, looking utterly bored and oblivious to his sacrificial plotline. While back in the hideout, Claire clenches her fist, refusing to let the disaster happen. Mary reveals a secret infiltration tunnel directly to the tower, noting their goals align: kill Elizabeth and rescue Sid. Mary extends a formal party invite, and Claire locks in instantly, sprinting out into the night while screaming for Sid to hold on. Meanwhile, deep in the narrow alleys of the Red Light District, the Red Moon's creepy influence has turned the pleasure quarter into an eerie, deserted nightmare. Suddenly, a dark-coated bodyguard gets absolutely blasted back in a spray of blood from a massive ghoul strike. A local working girl named Marie crouches in pure horror, listening to the stomach-churning crunch of ghouls eating nearby. Her cat-eared friend screams from down the alley to snap out of it because all the brothel's security guards just got wiped out. Marie is too paralyzed with fear to move, trembling alongside another blonde girl. And just as a ghoul looms over them, a flash of steel decapitates the monster in a massive fountain of blood, making Marie shriek. She opens her eyes, utterly bewildered, looking up at a mysterious figure with a ridiculously dramatic black trench coat fluttering in the wind. Standing on the stairs with his sword planted like an absolute boss, Sid introduces himself with his peak Chunibyo speech. "My name is Shadow, one who lurks in the shadows and hunts the shadows." He keeps his hood low, looking incredibly edgy, and tells them to run because the rampage has begun. Marie grabs his cloak, completely confused by his cryptic roleplay. But before she can ask questions, Sid uses his high-speed movement to vanish with a clean whoosh, leaving Marie staring at the fallen victims in distress. Her cat-eared friend rushes over to check on her, prompting Marie to ask about this mysterious shadow. The cat-eared friend stands over her with a serious expression, asking if she knows him. She explains his terrible reputation, recounting how customers say Shadow is the boss of a gang of villains who attacked the academy, destroyed the sanctuary, and have been doing whatever they damn well please. She points out that Shadow's arrival is probably the entire reason the town is currently glitching out, and lets out an exasperated sigh at the absolute mess of their workspace. Another blonde girl stares at a dead bodyguard in terror as the alleyway is revealed as a graveyard of blood-soaked bodies. But Marie is convinced Shadow is actually a hero, defending the weak, which makes sense since every single ghoul in the immediate area was instantly turned into cold meat. Meanwhile, up in the ominous ritual chamber of the Crimson Tower, the vibe is pure Gothic architecture, with a black and white checkered floor and a giant white circle around a central coffin. Lord Crimson and his formal-suited butler confirm that the human offerings are locked and loaded. Crimson looks out the window, noting the Red Moon isn't at peak saturation yet, but gloats that once it is, their beloved Elizabeth will revive. They discuss their campaign progress, and the butler warns that 3 specific high-level players are offering unexpected localized resistance. He he pulls up a hologram of the White Tower's elegant boss, Yukime, and the Black Tower's beefy armored ruler, Juggernaut. Crimson shrugs them off, confident that none of these scrubs can stop the Blood Queen's revival or their impending world domination. But the butler shows one final profile, a mysterious hooded figure who has been completely wiping their vanguard units. Crimson asks who this third mysterious challenger is, and the butler warns that this rogue player, known only as Shadow, might actually be the biggest threat to their entire operation. Back in reality, Crimson's face twists into a furious scowl as he spits Shadow's name, swearing that nobody is going to ruin his perfect raid plan. Inside the delusional theater of Sid Kagano's mind, the ultimate Chunibyo is busy min-maxing his budget, calculating that physical stats are useless without a massive bank account to fund his theatrical debut. He visualizes a gothic throne room stacked with treasure chests because his sister basically told him to go big or go home, plotting a 300-year speed run of keeping his Shadow Lord status active way into his retirement. This obsessive greed stems from his early game poverty, remembering when he literally scraped up pocket change on his knees and relied on the local megacorp, Mitsugoshi, just to survive. Now, he's fantasizing about the ultimate premium meal of pancakes and expensive red wine, fully convinced that self-earned cash makes the loot taste way better. Smash cut to the grimy streets of Lawless Town, where our boy is harvesting gold coins off mob drops, realizing that farming ghouls is the absolute easiest gold generation exploit in the game. Grinning like a lunatic under a rain of currency, he declares this Crimson Tower event his personal bonus stage. Meanwhile, the local Spellsword Union is experiencing a total party wipe on the blood-soaked cobbles below, screaming as their frontliners get absolutely shredded. Meat Shield Grain is panicking because the trash mobs keep pushing them back from the Blood Queen boss room, while a dark-haired warrior lady tells him to stop crying and stop ruining their raid party's morale. The DPS squad is already falling apart, with an angry Spellsword yelling that he knew this quest was a bad idea from the character select screen, especially since the Crimson Tower's old rule warns low-level players to never aggro this place. Rage quitting the guild mid-fight, the angry Spellsword runs away despite Grain's desperate pleas. Boom! Suddenly, the guild leader gets completely insta-killed in a spray of gore, leaving the dark-haired warrior screaming. The rest of the mob loses their minds, shrieking that they're totally doomed. The warrior lady tries to call a retreat, but she's cornered by a massive horde of ghouls and prepares to accept her inevitable game over. Whip pan to a sudden burst of lightning-fast shadow magic as our disguised protagonist drops a Chunibyo voice line, unleashing a massive jet-black whirlwind AoE attack that sends the entire mob flying. The blast knocks a couple of bystanders back like ragdolls, leaving Shadow standing in the dust looking ridiculously edgy. The warrior lady is left completely stunned, desperately reaching out to ask the identity of this mysterious high-level player, while offering her guild's full cooperation. Shadow doesn't even look back, dropping a cold, "Not interested. I'm finishing this speedrun solo" line before walking away. The warrior lady is left staring at his legendary silhouette, imagining him standing atop a mountain of loot under the crimson moon. Right on cue, a meathead named Glenn lunges into the fray with a heavy horizontal slash, moving over to the chaotic alleyways of Lawless Town. A major turf war is peaking as a local muscle-brained brute named Glenn lunges with a horizontal slash. He leaps through the air to execute a lethal jump attack on a smug, fox-eared lady. Glenn is screaming some unhinged threat about how he only came to hunt basic vampire bats, but the Vixen fighter just smirks at his absolute lack of manners. But Glenn doesn't care about etiquette and brings his giant sword down to finish her off. Suddenly, a massive flash of light blinds the alley. To Glenn's absolute horror, our hooded main character casually spawns in and catches the giant greatsword with a single bare hand. The brute's jaw hits the floor as he yells about the sheer impossibility of the parry. The fox-eared lady immediately narrows her eyes, demanding to know what kind of powerhouse just crashed their fight. Sid, loving every second of this peak Chunibyo moment, declares himself as Shadow, the ultimate hunter of the dark. He glares at them, basically telling these local NPCs to get out of his way, because his real business is inside the tower. The two local crime lords share a look of pure confusion, but Glenn's single brain cell finally sparks as he realizes this is the legendary leader of Shadow Garden. The fox-eared lady immediately changes her tune, dropping a gentle smile. She casually mentions she runs the local red light district and heard he rescued some of her staff. She even leans in close, offering a very personal late-night reward once the dust settles. But Shadow hits her with the ultimate Sigma male rejection, waving her off because he doesn't care about her rewards or saving random NPCs. Glenn laughs hysterically at her getting completely friend-zoned, but the fox-eared lady quickly gets serious, pointing out that the ghouls have been absolutely decimating their ranks. Glenn scowls at the sky, grunting that it's high time they demolish one of the town's rival towers. A mysterious tall guy in a wide-brimmed hat adjusts his coat and suggests they focus on the Blood Queen before Shadow steals all their potential loot. Right on cue, some edgy white demon character steps up, gripping a massive scythe and bragging about how excited he is to hunt new prey. He rants about how he's finally going to paint the town red under the moon. He even starts explaining his boring, tragic backstory about how he used to be a knight captain before his blood fetish got him fired. But before he can finish his monologue, the massive juggernaut, the tyrant, literally smashes through the brick wall like the Kool-Aid Man. The white-hooded cultists nearby immediately start weeping and crying about how they're completely outmatched. The white demon just smirks at the chaos, trying to finish his story about a woman he was once cutting up in an alley. In his twisted memory, the fox-eared Yukime is standing coldly in the dark. A cultist in his flashback is screaming in terror at her arrival, while Yukime just looks completely bored by the whole situation. He also recalls a seemingly weak guy in a black coat strolling through the alley. The white demon continues his internal monologue about how much he loves the sight of red blood, but his flashback suddenly cuts to him getting absolutely bifurcated by Shadow, blood spraying everywhere. His face contorts into a mask of pure shock. He ends up lying flat on the cold ground, staring at his own pool of blood while gasping in confusion. And as he looks up at the red moon, deep inside the dusty archives of the Crimson Tower Library, the lore master elf Beta is busy farming lore when her concentration is shattered by a series of massive explosions. Giant cracks spiderweb across the reinforced stone wall before Claire Kaganu and Marie crash through the debris like terrible players failing a stealth check. Claire groans about the wall being flimsier than expected, while Marie tells her to watch her step. Beta stands perfectly still, dryly greeting these uninvited intruders, but her eyes widen as she recognizes Lord Shadow's sister. Claire demands to know how she knows her name, and Beta quickly improvises, pretending she only knows her as the legendary champion of the War of God Festival. Claire draws her sword with hostile intent, forcing Beta to introduce herself as a member of Shadow Garden. Beta reveals they are searching for progenitor blood to cure possession, theorizing that the two are biologically linked. Marie flies into a rage, calling it blasphemy, but Beta throws out a massive drive-by deconstruction, exposing Marie's secret identity as the oldest vampire hunter. Marie gasps in shock, and Beta asks if she's still searching for her lost homeland. Claire instantly pivots, asking Marie what she knows about curing possession and pleading for a way to save herself. Marie goes dead silent, and Beta mischievously tells Claire not to worry about it. But when Beta asks why they're here, Claire hysterically cries out that her brother Sid has been captured and is about to be sacrificed by the Blood Queen. Cue a quick mental shot of Sid looking totally clueless, But Beta instantly has a massive tactical panic attack, her hands shaking in sheer horror. Under the mask, she screams in absolute disbelief, completely losing her cool over her beloved Lord Shadow being in danger. She tries to lunge forward in a panic, forcing Marie to hold her back and order her to stay on mission. Deciding they need to speedrun the rescue, Marie drags Claire out of the room. Inside the library, the masked blonde ponytail girl nods in agreement, while the chin-length-haired operative scolds the trembling Beta for her massive slip-up. The ponytail girl warns that they must stay in line and trust that Lord Shadow has everything calculated. Looking up at the massive spiral staircase leading to the boss room, higher up in the tower, Claire is already locked in combat, smashing her blade into a headless vampire in a suit. She panics when the headless mob keeps attacking, but Marie yells for her to pierce its heart. Claire drives her sword home, turning the elite trash mob to ash. Marie analyzes the increasing difficulty of the upper floors, and Claire praises her combat skills, suspecting Marie knows way too much about vampire lore. Marie plays it off as a basic hunter trait, but Claire presses her, pointing out her obvious sympathy for the monsters. Claire demands to know if she's hiding a major plot point as she calls out to Mary and asks what secret she is harboring. Marie deflects, counter-questioning why Claire is asking about possession and why she's so obsessed with the cure, before coldly stating that no cure exists anyway. Claire flinches in guilt, and Marie suggests they both stop prying. Suddenly, Marie hears fighting ahead, and they peek around the door to see the giant meathead Glenn throttling a red-haired vampire boss. Glenn demands to know where Crimson is, scowling with his facial scar prominent. But the vampire defiantly refuses to talk and dissolves into fog. Glenn drops into a defensive stance, cursing the slippery boss mechanic. Claire and Marie sprint away to avoid aggroing him, but they run straight into Juggernaut the Tyrant, who is standing over another dead elite, grinning about his high predator instincts. Huddled behind a wall, Claire and Marie panic as Marie identifies him as the terrifying Lawless Town ruler, warning Claire that he just easily soloed the third strongest vampire boss. Claire is shocked, but her cover is instantly blown as Juggernaut smashes the wall to pieces, looming over them like a max-level raid boss, ready to claim his new prey. Deep inside the glittering Crimson Tower treasury, our Chunibyo protagonist Shadow is busy min-maxing his greed with absolute concentration as he surveys a ridiculous expanse of gold mountains and sparkling artifacts. Framed dramatically against this absurd RPG loot pile, Sid strikes a triumphant pose atop the tallest coin mountain and screams, "Let's go, whoa, whoa, whoa!" laughing maniacally as literal gold rains around him. But his gamer brain hits a major inventory limit snag. He can't carry this entire haul, and he desperately wants to execute a perfectly timed, dramatic boss battle entrance against the Blood Queen. He can already picture the ultimate cutscene. Him locked in a high DPS clash right as the main party arrives, leaving a white-haired beast girl and a random armored grunt frozen in absolute shock. So he decides to speedrun the boss first and loop back for the loot, imagining himself dashing forward at blinding speeds just to live out his ultimate "what a crazy battle" fantasy. Meanwhile, a violent windstorm of debris blasts through the stone corridors, leaving a battered Marie checking on Claire, who is super annoyed that this clunky mini-boss Glenn initiated combat without letting him skip the dialogue tree. The scythe-wielding meathead grins like a typical lawless city psycho, launching a heavy swing that forces Claire to dodge roll before effortlessly parrying her retaliatory slash in a shower of sparks. Sneering at her basic swordplay, Glenn catches Claire completely off guard, landing a brutal, full-force punch straight to her face that snaps her head back and sends blood flying. He stands over her, trash-talking her weak build, but stops when he hears blood dripping onto the stone. Claire slowly picks herself up, wiping the fresh cut on her lip with zero fear. bragging that she's totally used to fighting because of her annoying, light-fingered brother. She calls Glenn a brainless brute with absolutely no skill, prompting him to laugh and admit he never trained in martial arts, which instantly triggers Claire to lunge forward at max speed. Glenn swings his massive scythe like a literal hurricane, and though Claire barely sways back, a sudden debuff of dizziness from that earlier punch completely throws off her balance. Left totally defenseless, she gets her cheek slashed open, staring in wide-eyed horror as she faces a game over. Out of nowhere, Marie rushes into the fray, swinging her blade with wild force and driving it into Claire's chest in a violent burst of blood, leaving Claire gasping in absolute agony and confusion. Marie stands there trembling with guilt, while Claire gasps, "Why would you do this?" before the weakened vampire girl slumps to the floor, leaving Glenn to gloat about baiting her aggro. He raises his giant blade to execute both of them, but Claire desperately shields her friend, right as Marie desperately begs to suck her blood, instantly tackling Claire and biting her neck. Claire is utterly bewildered, but after a second, Marie stands back up with a massive stat buff, wiping the blood from her mouth and exposing her sharp vampire fangs. Glenn is highly amused by this mid-fight phase change, laughing as he charges in, only for our cloaked edgelord Shadow to materialize out of thin air, parrying the strike in a shockwave of shattered stone. Claire watches in sheer shock, while Glenn tries to flex his stats, but instantly unleashes a counterstrike that blows Claire backward. Marie falls to her knees, gasping that she still isn't used to this blood buff, forcing Claire to scream her name as Glenn prepares a final execution swing. Claire freezes in sheer terror, and Glenn's blade crashes down, tossing her violently across the floor. Thinking it's a permanent wipe, she closes her eyes and apologizes to Sid, but at the absolute last frame, Shadow triggers his iframes, delivering a thunderous high kick that sends Glenn flying as he coldly tells him to buzz off. Claire opens her eyes in complete awe as Glenn is blasted through a crumbling stone wall, howling curse words at Shadow midair. Claire picks herself up, staring at her mysterious savior's back, but the ultimate role player just drops some cryptic dialogue about the time of awakening being nigh before his black cloak flutters and he instantly vanishes. Marie wonders if they were just saved, while Claire stares at the empty space, feeling a strange familiarity in that dramatic back. But she instantly snaps out of it, rushing over to check if her vampire companion is okay. Hiding around the corner, Shadow secretly listened before slipping away as Marie insisted, "We have to hurry ahead. I'll explain as we walk." Tipping her hat, Marie admitted, "Forgive me for sucking your blood suddenly. As you see, I am a vampire." Dropping 1,000 years of lore, Marie revealed, "I used to be the subordinate of the Blood Queen, Lady Elizabeth," and started her tale. This is a story that goes back over 1,000 years. A vision opened on a quiet rural village where locals marveled over a slain beast, asking, "What a surprise! This is one huge beast. Did Lady Elizabeth also defeat it?" While a mother gushed, "I don't know how to thank you for helping the children from such danger," Marie recalled reassuring them, "Your safety is all that matters. This is the land we ought to protect, after all. I, Mary, will make sure that Lady Elizabeth hears of your gratitude." As a bearded local contentedly noted, "Thank you. This country really is like heaven on earth." Marie explained that unlike other vampires who treated humans as livestock, Lady Elizabeth tried to protect them despite the agony of blood starvation. Standing under a parasol, Crimson noted, "It's fine," while Elizabeth added, "The sunlight still scares us, but not drinking blood lets us meet like this," before declaring her dream. "Let's make this land a haven for us, a land where we can live happily, with vampires and humans living together." The crowd cheered, "Lady Elizabeth," offering homegrown goods. "This is wine we produced ourselves, and vegetables." "And store parasols," We've built a new parasol, so please come to our store, Marie teased. Come on, everyone. We're still vampires, you know? If you startle us too much, we might bite you. While Elizabeth looked on serene, closing her eyes with a radiant smile. But when Elizabeth reached out to Crimson, he remained indifferent. Suddenly, blood spilled everywhere as Marie cried, "What is this? What's going on?" Amidst total carnage, why did Lady Elizabeth kill all the townspeople? Crimson smugly confessed, I put human blood in Lady Elizabeth's food, and I removed her shackles, explaining that the blood moon triggered her urges as Elizabeth bit a villager, and Crimson declared, her rampage has begun. There's no one who can stop her. Tonight, this country will be no more. Marie screamed, Crimson, why would you do this to Her Highness? Pointing to crucified vampire corpses, Crimson yelled, I'm sure you've seen that hellish sight. The killings of the vampires by the hands of the humans who knew our weaknesses were truly atrocious, and reminded her, have you forgotten? We were driven here by the humans who pursued us. He raged. I only made lazy Elizabeth open her eyes, while shouting, a haven is no more than an illusion. Marie explained Elizabeth's 3-day rampage destroyed 3 nations, after which the weeping queen impaled herself with a sword, telling Marie to scatter her ashes. However, the sword missed her vitals, leaving her dormant until Crimson stole her coffin. Holding her blade, Marie vowed, but this time I will put a stop to her. I came here with a vow to take Lady Elizabeth's life before bowing. That is all. I'm sorry for hiding this. Claire listened, saying, I see, and asking, I do not think a haven is an illusion. Is it not possible to save her rather than kill her? Marie argued. She does not seek salvation. Neither I nor her wish to commit the same mistake. But Claire yelled back, then I will save her, with a passionate speech. If that red moon is making her rampage, then all we have to do is bring her back to her senses after the moon goes down 3 days from now. And if we don't talk, we won't understand a thing. And if something were to happen to my brother, I don't know how I'd ever apologize to him. But he's a gentle child. If I talk to him, I believe he'd understand me. Picturing her soft boy vision of Sid, Claire smiled warmly. So, let's put an end to this, with smiles on our faces. Marie grinned. I'm sorry for giving you so much trouble, and pumped her arms, yelling, all right, now that that's settled, let's kick Crimson's butt and kidnap the sleeping queen. Yeah! And we'll definitely save your brother. But Claire instantly hit her with a freezing death stare. The one who will save my brother is me. Please don't step in. Meanwhile, down in the macabre depths of the mausoleum, the main villain Crimson stood triumphantly over an open coffin and a blood-stained floor. Whip pan to the blood-stained mausoleum deep within the crypt, where the vampire lord Crimson stands triumphantly over an open coffin. He laughs maniacally about the crimson full moon maxing out his vampire stats, throwing his arms wide before looking down at a dark-haired male sacrifice sprawled on the stone. Pointing to the jagged wound in the victim's chest, he boasts about implanting the queen's preserved heart to resurrect the ultimate progenitor boss. Suddenly, a sharp clack echoes through the hall, making Crimson jump back in absolute panic as a menacing, hooded figure steps from the shadows. Before the boss can even finish his monologue, Shadow cuts through the air, delivering a violent facial strike that sprays blood across the floor. Crimson tries to cope, smirking that red moon buffed vampires can regenerate from anything, but Shadow doesn't care about his recovery frames, instantly unleashing a flurry of invisible, rapid-fire strikes that tear Crimson's flesh to shreds. Blurring through the arena in a high-speed execution combo, Shadow ignores Crimson's desperate, trembling pleas to pause and talk, thrusting his sword directly through the vampire's chest with shattering force. Spatially glitched and coughing up blood, Crimson gasps, "No way!" while Shadow authoritatively demands the Blood Queen to come out and face him. But as the ceiling crumbles, only an awkward, heavy silence fills the empty room, forcing Shadow to stand there in a dead silence, awkwardly staring at the central coffin. Finally, he slides open the heavy stone lid with a rough grind, asking if she's inside, only to drop his edgelord persona in absolute shock upon finding it completely empty. Sid's inner gamer instantly panics, realizing his serious dash to the boss room was completely wasted. And looking down at the dead body, he assumes some other party already cleared the raid. Slumping his shoulders in absolute disappointment, he complains that wasting time to save his sister on the way cost him his epic boss fight moment. Muttering that he might as well just go back and loot the treasury, he casually walks away. But as his footsteps fade into the distance, Crimson's eyes suddenly snap open to a booming heartbeat, ready to trigger his Phase 2 boss fight. Inside the blood-soaked corridor of the vampire stronghold, Marie leads the way across the cold stone brick floor before stopping at a pair of massive wooden doors with a heavy expression. She warns that Crimson is hyper-lethal, and they must open the boss room carefully. But reckless DPS main Claire kicks the doors open with a violent crash while throwing up her middle fingers, screaming for Sid and telling all vampires to die. Marie rushes in behind her in shock at the complete lack of stealth, only for Claire to freeze when she sees an empty sanctum containing a single, motionless body. Instant emotional damage hits as Claire slumps to the floor, leaving Marie to guiltily whisper, "I'm sorry," and declare they missed the raid timer. Claire falls to her knees, pulling the dark-haired guy into an embrace, while Marie mutters about total defeat. Tears drip as Claire frantically shakes the body and begs Sid to wake up, totally ignorant of the true narrative cutscene. While cradling the stranger, Marie tries to comfort her shoulder, but the corpse's eyes suddenly snap open. Claire's grief instantly vanishes, replaced by utter suspicion as she shoves the creep away and flatly announces this isn't Sid. Marie stares in bewilderment, demanding to know if that isn't her brother, but Claire dismisses him because her real brother is way cuter. The decoy NPC flinches on the stone floor, whining that this is the second time she's ruined his tragedy cutscene as his form distorts. Claire ignores him and demands Sid's actual location from Marie. Marie's eyes dilate in terror as dark power erupts from the mob and screams a warning. Before Claire can dodge, the puppet thrusts his arm out, impaling her chest with a jagged blood spike and spattering blood all over her uniform. Claire gasps in agony, her vision going wide and unfocused as she crashes to the floor with a heavy thud. Marie rages and grips her weapon, but dark tendrils consume the decoy as she realizes it was a targeted bait-and-switch trap. A massive shockwave blast throws Marie across the room, choking out a tragic confession of failure. In the energy vortex, Blood Queen Elizabeth ascends into the air, floating serenely with her eyes closed. Claire looks up, paralyzed by the resurrection cutscene, right as Elizabeth dives down with predatory speed. The queen lunges and sinks her fangs deep into Claire's neck, drinking greedily as blood spatters and leaving Claire limp in her arms. Marie shrieks in total desperation, but the Blood Queen only glances down with icy, unmerciful eyes. Suddenly, the ceiling shatters as Shadow Garden's elite SWAT squad crashes into the stronghold sanctum. Epsilon lands at the head of the group, unsheathes her blade, and immediately shouts, "Number 664, before ordering the other elf, "Number 665, recover Claire!" Number 664 moves like a blur to scoop up Claire's limp body, checking for a pulse and sighing in relief. She's still breathing, albeit barely. The three squad members line up in dramatic battle poses, with number 664 declaring, "Leave the Blood Queen to us, Shadow Garden." Behind her cool demeanor, Epsilon is secretly suffering an intense mental panic about failing her supreme boss, visualizing Lord Shadow's epic hooded profile to fuel her resolve. An operative leaps forward to clash swords with the Queen's magical blasts, screaming, "I cannot betray his trust," as metal echoes against dark power. Number 664 delivers a swift thrust that pierces directly through Elizabeth's chest, shocking the Blood Queen. Though when 664 tries to retract her weapon, the boss's flesh holds it fast, prompting her to grumble, "Damn, I can't pull out my sword." Epsilon follows up with a heavy arching slash that drops Elizabeth hard onto the floor. Epsilon checks on her allies, receiving a hopeful response from another masked operative. "Well done, number 666. We might still be able to win this." However, Marie interrupts with grim reality, warning, "No, you can't." As Epsilon pauses to ponder if the Queen is just weakened, Marie explains, "But Lady Elizabeth has always been grumpy after waking up." On cue, the Blood Queen swirls her dark energy into a grotesque dress of blood that makes Epsilon shiver in dread. Breaking the tense atmosphere, wooden sandals clack across the stone as Yukime enters the arena, fanning herself with a smirk and chiming in, "Do let me in on the fun." Epsilon instantly recognizes her as Yukime the Yoko, just as a bruised and bloody Glenn limps in behind the Fox Lady, growling about payback. When Yukime giggles and asks what hole he crawled out of, Glenn roars, "Piss off! That bastard Shadow kicked me down, so I had to crawl up the walls all over again, damn it!" Feeling the Blood Queen's terrifying presence spike, Epsilon senses the insane danger level, but looking at this wild alliance of side characters gives her a sudden spark of hope. Glenn yells, "We ain't here for a staring contest," as he rushes in, screaming, "I'm gonna end this baby," while swinging his massive blade. But his attack passes harmlessly through Elizabeth as she dissolves into mist, leaving him shouting in total confusion. She turned into fog. Yukime remains unbothered, calmly suggesting they blow the cloud away, but a sudden blast of wind sends a Shadow Garden member flying. Refusing to back down, Epsilon leaps in with an X-slash, barking to her squad, "Quit standing around. If we keep slashing away, we should have a chance." Far away from the chaotic raid on the stronghold's top floor, Claire Cogano's consciousness drifts into a sterile white mindscape, where she lies unconscious on an invisible floor, with a smudge of grime on her face. Within this infinite white expanse, an ethereal voice echoes through the silence, asking, "Can you hear me? Do you hear my voice?" Claire suddenly finds herself standing upright, snapping her eyes open in complete confusion as she asks, "Huh? Where am I?" A sharp stinging on her cheek makes her touch a dark mark, panicking. "Ow! This blemish? It's possession?" The ultimate goth mommy Aurora appears nearby with a calm demeanor, explaining that it isn't possession and that he cured her of that disease long ago, dropping the subtle hint that he is someone very close to Claire. Tensing up with anxiety, Claire stammers, "Who are you? What's happening to me right now?" Aurora tells her to stay calm and that she is here to help, warning that two conflicting bloodlines are flowing through Claire's body and will rot her away if uncontrolled. Right on cue, a glowing magical seal flares on Claire's right hand. As Claire gasps, "That mark!" Aurora explains it will teach her how to control the magic. Noting that their time in this mental space is running short as the blemish fades, Aurora gives a confident smile and announces, "I'll be borrowing your body for just a bit. I won't be able to exert my full strength, but I should be of some help." Shocked by the invasion of personal space, Claire leans back and stammers, "Wait, who are you? Why did you save me?" Aurora drops a mysterious grin, starting to reveal her identity. "My name is Aurora. I'm here for you because," triggering a massive realization in Claire, "your shadows." The white void shatters back to the inner sanctum, where Marie leans over her crying. "Claire, you finally opened your eyes." As the mental light breaks like glass, Marie shouts her name in desperate relief, while Claire slowly stands up with an unnatural, fluid grace. A chill runs down Marie's spine as she takes a hesitant step forward, stuttering. "Hey, Claire? The color of your eyes." Catching a glance at her piercing profile, Marie gasps. "Became violet." A sudden surge of magical wind whips around Claire as the Witch of Calamity takes complete control, drawing her blade with a confident smirk and purring, "All right then, let's see how much we're able to endure."
The video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Like the video if you're ready for the next part.